This has always been a topic that has piqued my interest. When thinking of games I could play forever, I usually try to keep two things into consideration: how much content is there, and how much that content will have me coming back. I know many people would throw in length, difficulty, and story in as well, but those things probably won't ever be as valuable to me as content or replayability. Everyone values different things in a game, and that's great. But this topic is largely opinionated anyway, so the games I pick are going to be exclusively judged on how well they accommodate the things that align with my tastes. So, with how vast of a topic this is, I feel like there needs to be some ground rules because there are many ways one could cheat while selecting the games. So here they are. I'm only going to choose 5 games, 1 open world, 1 collection, 2 games that I know I can play forever, and 1 endless game, that being a game that has no definitive ending to it. Also, for my extremely long list of goats, I'm only allowing myself to pick 2 of them, because, let's be honest, it'd be way too easy to come up with this list if I didn't. I thought long and hard about each game on this list, and tried to apply those 2 factors as much as I possibly could. So without further ado, here's the resulting list. Enjoy, I guess. Probably the most obvious when it comes to games with content, the open world genre isn't one I'm the most experienced with. Don't get me wrong, I can definitely see the appeal, but I simply didn't grow up with the games that popularized the genre. A younger average Joe only had a Wii and DS growing up, so he simply couldn't have experienced them. But I'd say of the open world games I've played, Burnout Paradise is a requirement. Now, I do recognize that I'm kinda cheating a little bit. I feel like many people consider it an arcade racer, but with open world elements. And even if that's true, said open world elements are executed super well. Within Burnout Paradise, you have this huge main area to drive around in known as Paradise City. In the city, there are a bunch of missions spread throughout the street. There are your typical races, road rages, stunt runs, etc. But the kicker is that it's entirely optional for you to even partake in these missions. Nowadays, I just find it more fun just cruising through the city, enjoying the high-speed thrills, and blasting my way through some incredibly gorgeous landmarks. Come to think of it, that's another thing that this game has over other open worlds. With every other open world, they tend to really emphasize the loneliness and isolation in an attempt to really immerse you in their world, and while that works for most scenarios, it doesn't for when I'm stranded. In contrast, Paradise City feels so much more alive and lived in. There's still a vastness in its design, but I almost never feel isolated or alone. There's always something moving, there's always something to see, and I feel like those are things that do matter whenever I'm stranded. But that's barely scratching the surface. There are just so many stunt ramps to find, so many hidden areas to discover. This game is just so big. I can't ever get tired of this game. I can never get tired of driving around. I can never get tired of finding things. It's just, this entire game is just so evergreen to me. And no matter how many times I play it, it will never stop being fun. This is by far my favorite open world game, one of my favorite games period. And I'd go absolutely insane if I didn't bring it with me. Alright, so a collection. Collections is one of the more difficult types of games to choose, mainly because there are just so many good ones. However, I want to try and keep those 2 standards in mind, and while thinking about collections that reach those 2 standards, the Mega Man Zero ZX Legacy Collection is the first one that comes to mind. Look, alright, I know this wasn't a surprise in the slightest, seeing of how big of a Mega Man guy I am, but really, any of the Legacy collections could have been eligible for the spot. They are some of the most polished, cleaned up versions of their respective games, each coming with a plethora of cool little extras and side challenges that have a ton of replay value. However, seeing that the Zero ZX Legacy Collection came out a good some years after the ones on the Classic and X series, I argue that they really perfected how you make a collection in this style. Obviously, this collection comes with all 4 Zero games and both CX games, adding up to 6 of some of the finest 2D hack and slashes out there. In terms of extras, each game has an art gallery, a sound test, both of which feature new additions that are made exclusively for this collection. And then there's Z Chaser, which is a sort of time trial race kind of deal. You race another person through any given stage with the goal of being their personal time. And for what it is, being a cool little extra, this is probably one of the better ones, I'd say. All of these things are great and add so much to the core experience, but at the end of the day, I just love these games, man. I can never get tired of their core gameplay loop. It's just so fast, so speedy, so fun, so satisfying. It feels like with each game, they went about refining and adding on to the formula very differently. And these games generally provide a ton of ways to customize your arsenal to slash and dash in whichever way is the most comfortable for you. As a result, I not only get games that are a blast to play, but I get games that are very replayable and can last me a very long time. That, on top of having all this art and all this new content, this game is a lock as far as I'm concerned. Next! Sonic. Of the 2 games that I know I can play forever, I can easily tell you that one of them needs to be a Sonic game. The replayability factor especially is something that this series has pretty much built its name on. But man, there are just so many good ones to pick from, all of which going about replay value in dramatically different ways. So to prevent myself from going insane, I'm going to pick this game strictly on how well it meets the 2 standards that I set for it. And based on that, the Sonic game I picked isn't my personal favorite, but it hits both of those notes near flawlessly. And that game is Sonic Mania. Plus, the plus matters. Sonic Mania is one of the best games in the entire series. Hot take, I know. But on top of being some of the most fun that I've ever had with a Sonic game, this game by far has the most content of any game in the entire series. We got 5 playable characters, a few of which have levels built specifically for them. There's a bunch of different modes to choose from, one of which being Encore mode, where you play a truncated version of the main game as you swap between all 5 of the characters. There are a bunch of unlockables and cool little extras, like playing around with debug mode and giving Sonic the ability to have the insta shield or super peel out. And there's even a mode that allows you to play through the entire game with Knuckles by your side. What do you mean this isn't funny in 2022? So, yeah, all that stuff is gonna last you a pretty long time. I know with games like Sonic 3, it largely does most of the same stuff, and some might argue that's better because of how there's 2 sets of emeralds to collect and like a bajillion Blue Sphere stages. And I know Sonic Colors is my favorite game period, and it too also has a lot of replay value thanks to the eggshell and the semi-non-linear progression, and the game just being fun as shit. But even though I can safely say that I enjoy those 2 games more, the content in Mania is really what carries it for me. Swapping between all these characters, all these modes, customizing the game to play in the way that I want. It's because of all those things why, of the vast library of Sonic games to choose from, this would probably be my safest bet. With me also sneaking in Colors because I'm greedy. Anyways, for my second game that I know I can never get tired of, I made the executive decision to go with a Smash game. These games are famous for having some of the most content ever packed into a single disc/cartridge, and have some of the most fun fighting game mechanics ever. But for as big of a Super Smash Bros. Stan that I am, picking between each of these games wasn't that hard. It was really only between these 3. But even still, I have a feeling that this choice might have a bit more pushback. The Smash game that I'm going to choose is Ultimate. Whenever people bring up their issues with Smash Ultimate, they will always bring up the content and how little of it there is. Now, before I go and defend the content like the shameless Nintendo fanboy I am, I want to first say this. If I'm being 100% honest, the core fighting of Smash Bros is really all I need Don't get it twisted, it's not that I don't care about the extra content in these games. Hell, that's half the reason why so many people love Brawl nowadays. But for as much as I can respect the adventure modes and the subspaces and the like, I never go back to those modes nearly as much as I do with the core fighting. It's just something about the flow and the crunch of the fighting that's enough to do it for me. And it's that particular thing that Smash Ultimate damn near perfects. But in regards to content, a lot of it is centered around the core fighting. And in terms of that, there are a lot more modes to choose from than what might initially seem. Classic mode is still here, but with a massive overhaul, now having the route change based on the character that you picked. There's Squad Strike, which are a set of 1v1 matches that have you go up against a set of up to 5 opponents. And then there's Smashdown, which shrinks down the roster with every match you play, adding an intense layer of strategy to selecting your character. Others are welcome to disagree, but all of these modes, in my opinion, are really fun, and truly do spice up how you play the game. And, you know, it also helps that the roster is extremely gigantic and there are over 100 stages to choose from. With an enormous amount of content and a gameplay style that simply never gets old, Smash Ultimate is going to be my Smash game of choice. Next! Alright, last game, an endless game, a game that has no definitive ending to it, a game that you could quite literally play forever. Really didn't have to think that hard about this one. Alto's Odyssey. I really could have went with either Alto game because both are essentially the same deal. While they are your typical standard 2D snowboarding sim, it's their atmosphere, their environments that really draws people's attention. Both games do a fantastic job at this, and I highly recommend trying both of them out if you can. But with that being said, I'm picking Aussie, and here's why. I find that in terms of the mechanics and actually snowboarding, or in this case sandboarding, I find that Aussie does a lot more with the idea. It takes a lot of creative liberties with the desert aesthetic by having you grind on vines, on ruins, and even getting a speed boost while over water, which is awesome. I love feeling like Jesus. They added this new mechanic that allows you to slide alongside a wall, heavily diversifying how you traverse through this landscape. I don't know, something about the core combo chaining and getting a little mini speed boost after you land, all that's a lot more addicting than it sounds, and the various ways you could keep that combo going thanks to the grinding and the wall sliding, all that makes this one of the few endless games I go back to all the damn time. But for me, the aesthetics and the environment was really the deciding factor, if I'm being honest. Don't let my choppy 30 FPS footage fool you. That does not do this game justice in the slightest. The colors, the shading, the contrast of the environments can be absolutely breathtaking. And it adds such a nice spectacle while you're zipping through this endless desert, which again, draws you in its world in a completely unique way. It's just the way in which all these different aspects work together to create something that not many other games of its genre could create is all types of admirable. It might not be the most packed game out there or the most complicated game out there, but just the experience alone is enough to do it for me and to make me want to bring this game, cause I could spend days on end surfing this vast desert and getting lost in these beautiful, beautiful environments. I don't think many of you have gotten the chance to play this one, but it's on mobile and it's also on Switch if you wanted to own it on Switch for some reason. Actually, now I think about, all the games are on Switch. This wasn't a coincidence, I swear. But if you have the opportunity, I would definitely give this one a shot. Well, there you have it, my Desert Island games laid bare. I know some of these choices are a bit strange, and some might not even make any sense, but that's a big reason as to why I even wanted to make this video. Topics like these are genuinely interesting to me, and I've always found it fun to hear what other people can play forever, what types of games others find to have the most lastability. Heck, you might even completely disagree with my rules and go about selecting games entirely differently. Whatever the case, the discussion of Desert Island games has always been one that I'm very fond of. And of all the wonderful comments I've received so far, I'm truly looking forward to seeing what games you all would pick. By far my favorite part of creating content is getting into discussions like these, so it'd mean a lot if you could just drop a comment. As well as like, subscribe, and share.